Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar and Q&A today. I'm thrilled to be joined by Barry Cousins from Infotech and Joe Larscheid from OnePlan. And today we're going to talk about project portfolio management and some of the trends that we're seeing in the marketplace, and let you get your burning questions and gave you some answers for what you're looking for so that you can learn more about what's going on in the marketplace and how we can help you develop your business and be better at project portfolio management. So without further ado, I will get started. Barry and Joe, Barry, let's start with you. Why don't you give yourself a brief introduction and let the audience know more about you?
Thanks, Tanya. Hi, I'm Barry Cousins. I work at the Infotech Research Group. I've been covering project portfolio management, project management, and organizational change management for 14 years as an analyst in the space. I owned one of the competitors in the software space here in PPM for 12 years, and prior to that, I was in a big Canadian bank for 15 years. So I've kind of had 40 years of watching portfolios come and go.
Great.
Joe, how about you?
Sure, great. Thanks, Tanya. Thanks, Barry, again for joining us today. We really appreciate it. As Tanya mentioned, my name is Joe Larscheid. I'm the CEO of OnePlan. I haven't been in the business as long as Barry, but a little bit over a couple decades. In fact, next month will be my anniversary of the 25th year that I first started my first business that was implementing project portfolio management systems. So we used to take Project Central, WSS, and a third-party product called Enterprise Project that would kind of all mold together to become, the Microsoft PPM solution. Essentially, Microsoft eventually acquired that and created what we know about today as Project Server. So some of the old-time folks out there will understand that. But in 2007, our team built a SharePoint-based PPM product that was built in the cloud called EPM Live. And so it was one of the first online PPM tools in the market back in the day. Eventually was acquired by a company called Upland Software, where I ran the strategy for Upland for our PPM tools, where we acquired 4 different tools and eventually went public on NASDAQ. But as I was working with Upland, I started to see a different trend in the PPM space. I started to see things shifting quite a bit. And so I made a decision to move on and start building on a new platform built on AI in the cloud. And so that's where essentially OnePlan was born. And so I'm really excited about this session today. I'm hoping the team here will learn some new things and we can share.
So I'm just thrilled to have the brilliant minds of Barry and Joe with me today. And I know that everyone on the call is really excited to have the opportunity to ask them questions around the space. So please don't be shy. We'll start with some questions that were pre-submitted, but there's definitely want to take audience questions and make this more of a Q&A that you can use to ask your questions and fix some of the problems that you might have in your space or learn more about the marketplace. So we'll get started. If you have questions, please just put them in the question box and I will be monitoring that and provide those questions to Barry and Joe as we go along. So the first question, we often hear of the culture clash between teams using different project management tools. For example, a company may use Azure DevOps or another Agile type of platform for their engineering and software development teams, but their marketing teams or their HR teams are using Monday.com or Asana, and they have very clear preference for using those tools in those groups. So they don't really want to align on just a single project management software platform. Barry, what are your thoughts on how to handle that culture clash in the best way possible?
Thanks, Tanya. I don't know if we have to solve that problem. Don't get me wrong, I think a lot of people conclude they have to solve it. But if we allow the projects to run properly in accordance with whatever the departmental goals are and the processes and standards and governance expectations, we can glue it together at the portfolio level, where I do think you need a kind of a centralized and dominant, well-integrated set of stuff. If you glue it together with a well-formed portfolio, I don't think that you have to push too hard to have standardization at the project level. And for me, it all went back to an experience we had, as a team about a decade ago. The analysts and I were all briefing with a client, and he sounded really convincing. He was leading portfolio at a big U.S. university, and he said, well, obviously, what we need is to make sure all the projects are done the same way, right? And I thought about it and I said, well, why do you care if they're all done the same way? I think we want them all governed to the same kind of expectations, but do we really need them all executed the same way? What we need is the ability for the decision makers to oversee them and govern the whole thing. I think more so than needing to engage in the now pretty difficult disputes between competing tools. So I'm not a fan of having a whole lot of tools running out there, but I'm not really sure that we have to solve it there. I think we need to solve it at the portfolio level.
Yeah, I find it interesting for myself. This is actually one of the foundations OnePlan was built on. So, so all my years of implementing project portfolio management solution being like kind of a one-size-fits-all scenario, we saw a lot of resistance from people that were trying to use other methodologies or like the tools that they were just using today, right? I think with the movement of online and the cloud, it created this proliferation of all these different work management tools out there. And so there are all types of tools out there that are purpose-based. There, construction, there's agile, there's traditional waterfalls, there's quick, easy to do Kanban ones. And so our belief when we went into this was, let's create a portfolio management platform that was built to connect to third-party tools. And this would help, increase user adoption and meet, less resistance from the user base. And so we kind of build on that foundation that we believe letting people use, I guess we call it the power of choice. Let people use the tools that work best for them. Pull that data into a portfolio management system where you can allow for governancing of those initiatives and projects. You can centralize resource management, financials, and portfolio prioritization. So we see this as a big trend moving forward. I'd say probably over 85% of our customers have at least one connection with some type of tool, another work management tool. And so this is kind of a differentiator that we feel we have in the market.
Perfect. So Barry, also one of the participants said they love your guitar. So just so that everyone knows that we're live, they love your guitars.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And then the next
I love
question.
them too.
Yeah. Nice. So Barry, your research shows that 46% of companies are using Microsoft Excel or SharePoint today for portfolio management, which really hinders their ability to be strategic. What is your advice to those companies?
Yeah, this has been contentious, and frankly, it was contentious for me. It was on my radar as somebody who invested 12 years of his life and most of his wealth in building a software company to compete with Joe. But the interesting thing was that we could say that the portfolio tools weren't adopted as much, and it's true. But also just the processes behind them weren't as developed as they needed to be. So we come at it, we say, well, how do our customers think of portfolio management? And that varies widely. So the way I look at it is, if almost half of the client base is going to have their portfolio list, like at least the list of their projects, if that's sitting in Excel or in a SharePoint list or on a whiteboard somewhere, can we help them do that better? So, over a decade ago, I published a thing at Infotech, and it's called Grow Your Own PPM Solution. And anyone who looks at it is going to be probably uncomfortable, as a vendor. But the first thing I say in there is, if you're going to grow your own, please do it better. Like, have great reporting coming out of it so that your decision makers can do their jobs, and then outgrow your solution. So what we're trying to do, help people like make that work, and then please outgrow it. So we're setting the process in place, and the triggers to look for, and the processes to mature, the skills to develop, so that people can kind of grow into that idea of succeeding with a commercial PPM solution. So yeah, it's awkward to have a homegrown offering, but every bit of what we're doing is trying to develop the processes and methodologies so that they can go. Most of them, by the way, exited the commercial PPM market at some point in time, and we're trying to help them re-enter it, but with better developed skills and processes for the most part. So I would say, rather than hide it, we do thousands and thousands of customer conversations, and we'll say, well, where's your list of projects? And the common answer is like, oh, they're just in Excel. I'm like, well, don't be shy about that. Like, there's some really successful big businesses doing that. We just have to make sure you do it better.
Yeah, we find from our customer base that a lot of our customers started off with using Excel and SharePoint. It's always the first step, like let's centralize all your projects at least into a central view somewhere. But what we found with the customers that we've worked with is that Excel and SharePoint just don't really scale well, right? So if you're really trying to create continuous improvement in your organization, where you maybe want to add in some resource management now and starting to get visibility into where resources are being allocated, or financial management, it just doesn't have that ability to scale. It just becomes a very manual in maintaining that spreadsheet. So we typically advise our customers to, gradually introduce a purpose-built PPM tool, like OnePlan, that can scale, right? And so that you can start with a portfolio of initiatives and projects like you had in Excel or SharePoint, but you could then slowly roll out, new processes and capabilities to the team to help improve the business. And so it's one of the reasons why OnePlan is built on the Microsoft 365 platform, is because we understand that a lot of the enterprise organizations out there use Microsoft as their kind of core productivity platform. And so we wanted to create a seamless experience with those user bases. So Barry, to your comment around using Excel, typically what we do with work with customers is we take their Excel file, we basically import it into OnePlan. Now they got that same Excel file viewed in a portfolio within OnePlan. You can get a Gantt chart, a board, a roadmap, and then you can then slowly roll out additional capabilities. So that's kind of what we see with a lot of our customers, of how they use Excel and then moving to the tool like OnePlan as a purpose-built PPM tool.
Yeah, if we can make that top level conversation, if we can get it to being, where again, even if it's a SharePoint list or Excel, if we can have that be what's moderating the conversation between decision makers and PMO, or like, your biggest, most sensitive projects and the top layer, then people can literally grow on that and more easily transform into a commercial solution. The ones that are trying to do it grassroots, that are sitting there with their data in Excel, but they're not, that's not facilitating their interaction with the decision makers, they're going to have a much harder time, and it doesn't matter so much what tech they're using. They more have a process and like a corporate hierarchy design problem.
That is true.
So the next question is, speaking to project portfolio management maturity levels within organizations, Barry, what have you seen your clients do that is holding them back as an organization in getting more mature on the scale?
So setting the software conversation to the side for a minute, because this has really no relationship to what level of software people are using. We've gone through a really awkward era where the approved project has been seen as a measure of successful outcome rather than the completed project. And so in short, across the market, I think we've had this malaise of people approving too much work. And we're not seeing the accountability at the individual executive level. I know that, 35, 40 years ago for me, the notion that an executive would promote a project within the bank that I worked in that didn't have really super believable outcomes attached, that they really didn't have a high, confidence in their ability to execute, that would be career suicide 35 years ago. And today, I don't think it's as much of a concern. Today, I think projects are being approved on the desirability of the idea, which sounds great, but without those guardrails and those constraints of like making sure that the organization can execute on all those projects, this is where we end up. We see a really high level of waste from projects that were started and not completed. And that is a direct byproduct of approving too much, I would suggest. So the project problem is really a portfolio problem, if you ask
Yeah,
me.
I was gonna say, I think what we typically see some of the challenges that people take a project portfolio and like tool and kind of treat it as just as a work management tool, right? They just want to use it to just manage projects and manage the tasks. But that, that makes perfectly sense. That's why there are so many work management tools out there that are in the market that we integrate with. But I agree with Barry that I think one of the challenges that they need to look at the portfolio management as a tool to drive business success, right? What projects are best aligned with your strategic outcomes, and how can you make sure that those projects are moving on track to achieve those outcomes, and not just let's do a bunch of work in a work management tool. So I think sometimes people miss the opportunity when they implement a work management or PPM tool to look at how these initiatives are really aligned to the corporate strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Another one I see, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Joe.
I think another one I see, because I'm going to talk technology very, because I'm in the software business. So I guess when you start implementing tool sets, another area I see being challenging is the reverse, right? There's the idea of just doing too little, not little, just doing not doing a little bit, doing just like task management and not really taking advantage of the rest of the platform. But I also see the reverse, where sometimes people have the Big Bang theory. It's like, oh, this is all great capability, and they go in and they overcomplicate the process and try to expose way too much to the organizations, and so then essentially nobody gets anything done. So I see that as another area of challenge. We have a kind of a crawl, walk, run philosophy that we try to help our customers and businesses with how to get value incrementally. So that's another area I see challenges in deploying and implementing PPM.
I was going to inject something, Joe. I don't know if this simplifies things for people, but I do think it kind of shines light on a dilemma that existed. It existed for me, as a vendor as well, big time. It's this notion that a well-formed portfolio, and you guys are seeing it way more now than I did, a well-formed portfolio is probably going to have a bunch of things underneath it where the work management details don't just feed directly up to the portfolio. There's an abstraction. You might have a project up in your portfolio that says it's on track and 70% on or whatever, tracking to completion on time. But down here, it's a collection of, Jira tickets or, ADO tickets.
Sure.
And there's nothing in the collection of work at the work management level that you can't calculate anything, aggregate something, summarize it. It just takes a human to look at that and go, yeah, we're going to make our date. And so it's like a need for abstraction. There's a need for a human in the middle to say, yeah, the work's proceeding okay down here in this ticketing system, and I think we're going to make our date. This abstraction that doesn't allow us to compute our conclusion of whether we're on track. And that the nature of that abstraction changes from tool to tool. We've seen people doing what you're talking about, Joe, where more and more people are saying, well, we run Monday and a few things over here. But that doesn't mean they show up at both our doors and say, well, we want to integrate these. I'm like, well, what do you want to integrate? Because I'm not sure it's just a matter of this new adapter plug. The data itself doesn't compute up to your portfolio level cleanly. So dealing with that layer of abstraction is something that our whole industry has to overcome, because what we're not getting is this direct tie. The way Microsoft painted Project Server back in 2003 when they announced it was literally going to be like, oh yeah, you've got this total perfectly well maintained empire of tasks in this beautiful hierarchy over there. We're going to pull the lever and it's going to be like, hey, Tanya's free on the 25th of December at 10 a.m. That's not how it works.
Well, our platform, we have actually a dedicated integration component. It's one of the first things we built when we started on OnePlan, and it was designed to be able to translate information that is in third-party tools like Monday or say Jira, right? Totally two different methodologies, two different ways to manage the work, but to translate that into a standard that can be consumed by a portfolio team to be able to understand kind of what is going on overall, so that I can actually see, is Tanya available next week based on that data. So we worked really hard to try to solve that problem, right? To take these different tool sets and how they're being managed and methodologies and help. Obviously, it takes time, work with the governance team to say, what's the standard, right? How do you want to view this data? And then we are able to kind of translate that. So it is an area that we are working hard and continue to work hard on, solving that for organizations.
Yeah, cool. I think that's the a really critical success factor for our whole industry.
I agree.
So the next question really comes around change management. Implementing PPM is very challenging. There's lots of moving parts, we know. What are some best practices you've seen companies adopt to help to mitigate risk and manage change through the process of implementing a PPM process?
This might be the best candidate you get for organizational change management, like in a pretty formal way. As we see it within all of the projects in our portfolio as well. But when you're talking about moving ahead with a new PPM system, even right back to that very first moment of OCM with what's the change impact, and I think that's something that the OnePlan folks have to deal with like a lot, because the change impact with what you're doing, Joe, with the variety of tools you can integrate with, the change impact is wide open. It could be so many different things that we have to account for in making sure that the end user, in this case, the people running the portfolio and the projects, make sure they are ready to adopt. So, to me, I think if we go right back to the very beginning, it's all about change impact and accruing from there. And by the way, part of what kills me about that whole thing, we see a lot of kind of there's two natural propensities that we've seen the market have relative to implementing a new PPM system. One of them is to start way too late and to think of it as like, okay, well, now we need a communication plan. And most of them are starting, again, they're starting too late then. And then if they're starting too late, not just way too late, but too late, they might say, well, then let's identify our stakeholders, which is a common piece of OCM. Every single time they do that, I find if they start with change impact, then they find a different group of stakeholders are impacted. And so it's not just a list of executives and departments. They're getting right down into the weeds of who's genuinely impacted by this change. And so at the end of the day, if we back it up to what I think is the natural place to start, it's to, if you're preparing to move to OnePlan, then really focus hard on maintaining your own data that you have, even if it's not that rich at this point in time, even if it's just a list of projects. Everything you can do to stabilize that and make it, as good a data set as you can get is going to make your launch of OnePlan that much easier.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we kind of have these standards, best practices to ensuring success, like when implementing a PPM tool like OnePlan for us. The first one that we kind of try to set is start small, right? Just focus on the top 3, maybe 5 at most, high priority areas that you're looking to get some results out of. Because what we found is, if you do the big bang, like I mentioned earlier, you're setting yourselves up for more probability of failure and rolling that out just because of change management, as you mentioned. So focus first on high priority items, get value out of the solution so that you can get buy-in from the rest of the team. By starting small, you do a phased approach. So we can create, we help people create roadmaps of rolling out so you can incrementally get more value out of the solution. And so your people are able to adopt to that change and you start to see that success. And so that's, some of the things that we mentioned. The other one is executive buy-in. So we found if you don't really have someone at the executive level saying, you guys need to do this. This is something we want to do as an organization. We find that to create a lot of challenge down the road when people start getting pushed back. on the solution and not wanting to do it. And the last one is the importance of training and support. You know, a lot of times organizations don't realize that there are different levels of maturity and understanding of project management in their organization. So you might look at your top performer and say, well, everybody should be able to use the tool like them. But, you know, a lot of times other people need some training and support to help them make sure that their data has been entered and is up to date and is accurate and so forth. So making sure that that becomes a priority, as well as there's some common best practices we share with our customers.
Perfect. We've got a couple of questions from the audience on AI, and it's certainly a big buzzword topic this time of year. But the first question is kind of relates to the change management question as it relates to AI. So how would you suggest companies combat the resistance to change to incorporate AI into their daily workflows?
I don't know if we have a generic answer or a, you know, a widely applicable answer to that. Depends what we're doing with AI. In fairness, we've reviewed so many different use cases for AI and generative AI within the PPM space. I think we would have to nuance the answer. So here goes. What I'm using it for right now, the least popular thing I've ever done, and I love this. I've got a thing called audit the project portfolio. It's pretty harsh. It's something that happened to me twice in life, and maybe I'm just bitter and I want everyone to get audited, but it's a pretty valuable thing. So what we did is we took this audit standard. These are the expectations to have a well-run portfolio, strong sponsorship, you know, always aware of your status, things like that. And we use AI to conduct audit interviews. It's working really well. So in that sense, getting people ready for it is literally just trying to help humans do their job better. It's not replacing a job at all. Most of us don't have portfolio auditing going on. So when I think about, like, you know, managing, monitoring for portfolio risk, yeah, it's a fairly mature part of the market that does that already. And we can use AI to come up with some pretty reasonable questions to lead people through of, you know, have we adequately captured, articulated, and mitigated the risk related to your portfolio or your project. So things like that, I think, can help people do their job better. But in terms of, augmenting the project management staff, I haven't seen that case yet where I really believe it. We have 60 use cases for it documented that we're following, and most of them that are believable in the next year just involve helping humans do their job better. So for me, I run an AI agent every day, and it grills me on what I'm focused on. I call it the analyst focusator, tongue in cheek. And it's literally like, okay, man, how's this project going? Did you do anything on it yesterday? And so, you know, if I'm carrying 3 projects that I'm supposed to be bumping along, it's going to bug me about all 3 of them, and, you know, and all the other things I do for a living. So it just varies widely based on what kind of activity we're contemplating with the AI. And I think a lot of them are perhaps further in the future, but I'm going to vote for anything that helps us maintain the data better. So if whether I'm using, you know, a spreadsheet and Power BI, or whether I'm using OnePlan, if the AI can contribute to our executives being able to push a button and see a consumable report, then I would say in the next kind of medium term, that's what I think is going to add the most value, is making our systems more usable by adopting them better. More so than creating anything terribly new at this point. I think we can just help us do better.
Yeah, for me, I'm super excited about this area. Obviously, this is an area of focus for OnePlan, hence the .ai and the domain, right? This is something that we built on as well as a platform, had to be AI driven. So we did a lot of things around predictive analysis, you know, using machine learning in the past. We've used it for giving insights to what things need to be updated and changed in the portfolio management system. But since the release of Gen AI, it's been really opened up the door to a whole new world for us at OnePlan and what we're doing with our product to help with lots of different things. So things that I think about are like augmenting data entry. So one of the things we're trying to do with AI, with OnePlan, is how do we make it easier for people to create their plans, right? So right now you can actually go into OnePlan, and we have a GPT bot called Sophia, where you can actually have a conversation. We're actually not right now a conversation, but you can talk to it to have it do things for you, like create me a new plan. You can tell it what the plan is about, when you want the plan to start. You can upload some documents, maybe some meeting notes, and it's going to go actually out and create the plan for you. Fill out some of the high-level description, business case. It will even do the prioritization for you based on its algorithms. But so we're looking at this ways to kind of help automate that whole process. You can now go in and build like a business case. You can say use Pinbox templates, standards, and it will actually go out and build you a business case based on the project data that's in there. And so it's helping you augment the process. Is the way we see AI helping people today. Today, to me, it's an assistant, and it's a way to help you day to day in interacting with a project portfolio management tool. Things like being able to retrieve information. So you can go into OnePlan and go to the portfolio and say, give me a summary of my portfolio data and give me some trends that you see are impacting our performance, right? And so it will go through, it will collect the data, it'll do the analysis, and it will write back to you. We are working on it talking back to you, and we'll talk more about that later probably. And so then, these are just some of the things that we're seeing. And to your point, Barry, data, looking at data quality, is there anything in this portfolio that seems out of alignment that needs to be looked at? And so we see a lot of opportunity with AI, resource management, financial optimization, prioritization. And so we have a huge investment going into using AI. And so where I see it going is there's this stage right now of you have this assistant that you kind of interact with, but over time, I think there's going to be some automation, autonomous automation going on in the future, right? So like doing prioritization, you won't have to have people manually going check this in and that's out and doing what if and moving things around. You'll have AI being able to create these models for you, but you will need people to validate them, right? I think there's someone who will always be there overseeing AI and making sure that these schedules are created correctly or being updated, or the models of prioritization make a lot of sense and keep them in the guardrail. But I do see it getting more and more automated. Now, I don't think that means jobs are going to go away. I think that just means people are going to be, two sides I see. I talked about earlier, you have these people, you have these really good, mature, experienced project managers, and you have some maybe intro level. And so AI with the assistants helping everybody kind of be similar at some level, right? So some people may not be as great as writing business plans or risk mitigation plans, but AI can help somebody that doesn't have that experience yet be kind of up at the level of people that are experienced doing it. So I see a lot of opportunity to bring people up the ladder there and their experience with project management using AI. But I also see the movement of going to where you now start to monitoring AI in the future, and that will be kind of the vision we have of where AI is going in this space. I could go on all day around AI. I could tell you all the different things OnePlan is doing or is done in OnePlan with AI in OnePlan. It's definitely a very exciting spot for me that I could talk all day on it.
So I think of this as there's a great opportunity, frankly, for all the vendors in the space to defend, extend the value of the software using AI. And whenever I think about it, I go, well, if all we get out of it in the next 2 years is better data, Joe, when I go back and analyze things, I think the customers I've studied are probably under-investing in portfolio. So there's the question over here about how much they spend on project management, but I want to look at the overhead of running a project portfolio. I always think of it as for every 100 people you're overseeing that are, working in project teams, there's 15 or 16,000 hours a month. So when we break it down to that, our question is, well, if you have 100 people and you're spending 15,000 hours this month, how many hours is reasonable to oversee all of that at the portfolio level? And we
Mhm.
meet lots of people where it rounds off to zero. And so AI is not threatening anything, really. It's just AI might be kind of plugging a gap that most people have had, where, at the end of the day, I don't think they're spending enough administratively on portfolio.
Fair enough.
That's what we see.
So Barry, this one's probably directed more at you first. So what do you see as the emerging PPM trends?
I think the number one trend we're going to see is a reversion to some real gravity around your portfolio size. So, Tanya, I've been describing it as a throughput model for a lot of years. And we have a conversation running all the time about, are you running a throughput strategy or an intake strategy? A throughput strategy says we're going to assess our success on what we get done, projects that get through, obviously completed and start adding value. The market is still dominated and has been for 20 years by an intake strategy, which is we're going to select, identify, approve the projects we find most desirable. And I believe we're seeing a reversion right now where there's going to be a lot more business gravity at the portfolio level, not on like shine light on the best projects, but get the best projects done. And we're going to see a kind of a reincorporation to some real sensitivity around waste. This idea of how much waste did you generate by starting projects that don't get done. We were celebrating it in the sense of, iterative and agile and things like that, lowering the bar on what it takes to get a project started, to get that first sprint. Well, if you're going to lower the bar on getting projects started, sooner or later, you're going to have to raise the bar on keeping them going. And that's what this whole thing starts to collide on with the throughput concept. So I think the dominant trend we're going to see is some real, like, again, reversion to executive gravity on the penalty for approving too much. And there's been a lot of years have gone by when the decision-making layer has kind of played dumb a little bit. They've kind of been like, how are we supposed to know we approved too many projects? I think that's going to get tired real quick. It is getting tired. So I think that's the dominant theme that we're seeing at Infotech. And I'm speaking, across the whole range of from successful clients to less successful clients. And I would say that's a kind of consistent thing. The next thing is some kind of maturing of our industry and how we work with, I was leading the charge myself 15, 20 years ago to say we should be saying work management, because there's a lot of what people are doing that isn't really project management. They're just managing work. And it really collides with project and portfolio. Well, we're seeing enough now, again, maturity in the just the thought space around it from people realizing that we all kind of saw this. I think that the pendulum swung pretty hard away from deterministic task scheduling, like 30 years ago, and it swung pretty hard to agile, and it's going to correct back. It is correcting back right now pretty hard to people. Really, if you're going to be agile, like really doing sprint planning every sprint and really having a pruned backlog and genuinely entering every sprint believing that you've directed the resources in the most appropriate way. I think things got a little too loose as everyone was celebrating not doing a lot of, not doing as much upfront planning as we did in decades past. Well, that the correction is happening right now. People are maturing that up and saying, if you're going to be agile, you've got to do the ceremonies correctly. You've got to actually do what was prescribed, not just celebrate, moving away from rigor. There's actually a ton of rigor in agile. And if you go and try to use OnePlan or any software like it, your success skyrockets if you follow that rigor.
Yeah, Barry, we're seeing the same thing. I think it was a few years ago when we kind of started on the OnePlan. It was this move from traditional to agile, right? And everybody's goal is to get we call the shift left, get as agile as you possibly can and scale it. And that was kind of the momentum that we saw in the market. And that's why we started on this this project. But we're starting to, as well as see that starting to slow down and kind of come back to where we kind of now kind of present it as adaptive, right? Because I think people need a little bit of balance, right? So they have to have ability for agility and be able to pivot, but we also need to have some governance and risk management and control just to make sure things are, staying in line. So we're seeing a lot of that in trend there, and I think it's an area that we really try to focus on. Yeah, but there are benefits to kind of shifting towards more agile, which we've seen is the alignment of these initiatives to business outcomes and goals, right? I think we have kind of moved to kind of the naming, and so as the market has started to move from PPM, which project portfolio management, to more strategic portfolio management, right? So the idea here is, how do these initiatives really drive the business outcomes? Not, are these projects on budget? Are they on schedule? All these lagging indicators that PPM used to, kind of focus on. It's more about using some of the agile kind of techniques to go, hey, if that project is over budget, but it's really driving the needle for some key, goals of ours, let's keep funding it, right? Let's keep moving that, let's keep that thing going. And so there's some good mixture of agile and traditional that we're seeing being mixed into all the solution, and what people are using to get the outcomes is the trend of ours. Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen another one that we're seeing is zero-based prioritization. So, this is another agile mixture with traditional, where, with traditional, we used to look at what's actively in the pipe and what could we force in there, to get more out of the value out of the business. And what we're seeing is this zero-based prioritization, where it's like every quarter or so, let's just wipe it clean, and now let's look at our strategy or our outcomes or our goals, and then let's start to re-put the puzzle back together where we think we can get the best, value or best outcome of our projects and investments. And so we're starting to see people changing the way that they do kind of prioritization. So that's another area that we're focusing on there. So those are kind of some of the trends I'm seeing I can think of right now.
Joe, part of the underneath that trend, in fact, one of the things really propelling these trends that we've seen is the shift into doing a phenomenally better job of demand management. I personally am not a fan of what we did in decades past, and I'm talking maybe 20 years ago. I'm not a fan of that because it felt like individual funding initiative requests, the project being proposed, and it wasn't really necessarily being done holistically in a well-formed product strategy. And we're seeing that right now all over the place, and that's a good thing. I mean, we're putting way more insight into the articulation of demand, again, at the product level, not just at an individual project. So I think that's going to be what saves this whole industry over time. But we've maybe over pivoted in some ways. And the challenge that I've got for the market right now is, if you formed your vision roadmaps for all of your projects, and you're out defining the work you need done, there's some kind of a balance, a reconciliation needed. And we've seen a lot of roadmaps being painted where the organization can't fund 90% of it. And I'm a little nervous about that, frankly. And again, we've overstated demand to such an extent that this reconciliation has to happen. And I think we're going to end up seeing people, product owners and product managers, going back and saying, yeah, we did articulate a vision that we're just not going to get funded, and we're going to have to re-articulate something that's more right-sized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and what we're seeing as well with that is, to what you're talking about, Barry, is it's actually breaking down your projects to more smaller bite-sized chunks. So I mean, if you took Agile, you look at epics and then features, right, and breaking it down to that, or you take projects and break them down to deliverables. So we have people doing this in OnePlan where they actually can incrementally fund just parts of projects until they get the full value out of them. So that's another area, to your point, that we're seeing that helps people realign that investment into smaller bite-sized chunks so that they can do that versus committing to your long-term, like two-year roadmap, right? And be committed all the way through. So just break that up a little bit. And then you could fund the first initial part, go to another higher priority thing, then come back fund the second part. And so over time, you're gonna get the best value out of your investment. So that's what we've been seeing people doing with OnePlan to try to curb that challenge that you mentioned.
That makes sense.
Mariola, I'm going to pull in some audience questions here, and Barry, maybe put you on the spot for this one. Barry, what do you think the value OnePlan brings to the market for PPM leaders?
So I'm going to use the word adaptability, and I'm not trying to use it in the same sense of adaptive, portfolio management, by the way. What our customers have seen, so I have to look at it through the lens of my customer base, and when they bring us this problem, I think OnePlan has been presenting a more complete solution, just in the sense of it being adaptable. So the need to, Joe talked, earlier in this conversation about the need to be able to integrate a whole lot of different software products together, especially at the work management layer, right? And so we've actually seen that to be pretty viable. Any of our customers might have seen a conversation that I had with another member of the OnePlan team and some members of my team a couple of years ago, when we said, how should our customers think about the evolution of the Microsoft side of this story? And the way OnePlan can show, at a component level, the ability to assemble a solution architecture, to the client's need. I actually think that that's a strategic advantage here. That in my opinion, probably shortens the decision-making path when you can say, yeah, we can integrate pretty naturally across all of these pieces, and have a portfolio sort of solution sitting above it. I think your decision-making path is shorter with OnePlan. I think your implementation path to the real solution is shorter, but I think the ability to adapt is the real reason it's successful, right? So in 18 months, you're going to have some turnover, some executive change, some process change, maybe a reorg and whatnot. And I see this platform as something that you can be adaptive with. And again, say, okay, well, maybe guess what? We have to use ADO now. We're going to step away from Jira. And it's like, how disruptive is that going to be? How smoothly can we introduce it? And get back to the point of governance with well-informed decision makers. I think those things set up as a strategic advantage, whether you're using literally just what we've seen as the OnePlan product, or its ability to integrate across the whole set of Microsoft options too. So that's what's been resonating with the Infotech client base, I'd say, the most.
This kind of builds on that question a little bit. Going back to the Excel question, Stephanie is asking, why is it that organizations are so hesitant to detach from Excel dependence? And how do you sell something like OnePlan to the leadership team?
I think the lack of traction is probably, practically speaking, the real reason why people have, I don't know if they've clung to Excel, because that's actually, it's probably not true. You know what's happened? A colleague of ours, Travis Duncan, probably half the world has worked with Travis now. Travis Duncan wrote a piece a few years ago called 51st Gantz, and it was borrowing the feeling of that, what was it, Drew Barrymore movie, 51st Dates, I think. And it was like, you wake up in the morning, it's like, oh, geez, we got to organize your portfolio. The leadership needs a report, an update on Friday. And it's that sense of, oh, we're starting again. So when we say that people have been in Excel for a long time, how many times in the middle of that did they go file new and create a whole new list of projects? There's no continuity, quarter to quarter to quarter in a lot of cases, where they probably have just gone file new and let's create some columns, project names, start date, end date, project manager, sponsor, and things like that. So I think getting traction with the leadership on having them make decisions from your reporting is the thing that springs you forward and leads you to actually having it together enough to go out and have a viable conversation with a vendor like Joe. And breaking out of that has been one of the hardest things we've seen. And there's always this one last insight there. There's this really wild propensity in the market when people do grow their own. It's crazy how many times, well, let's bring our best PMP in, and next thing you know, they've got 80 columns in their spreadsheet instead of the 6 they need. I'm a PMP too, so I'm partly to blame for this, but it's the overstatement of their ability, their propensity to maintain the damn data is part of what led them here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we see on our side is we actually help customers build concepts using an Excel spreadsheet. So we'll work with anybody to take those Excel spreadsheets, put it into OnePlan, so executives can see, what the value they can get out of having a more pure purpose solution. So that's something that can help people in the audience to help sell this up to management of why moving out of Excel to a more pure play solution is important.
Yeah, so a couple other questions left. I think we have few minutes left, but next question is, how do I help my organization align my PPM strategies with the goals of the business in a way that is meaningful to them?
For us, we broke it down into something we call a throughput model, actually, to align strategies. There's part of the industry that thinks a well-formed portfolio strategy is articulated as an optimized list of projects. But when we look at an actual, you want to take your business strategy and walk out with a good portfolio strategy, what you're doing, in my opinion, is optimizing the answers to questions like, who approves projects? How do they get approved? Who's allowed to request them? What visibility comes from those requests? What is our tolerance to reconciling supply and demand? How completely does a project have to be resourced in order to initiate it? Like, I could go on. We've got a whole list of projects that we think a portfolio strategy answers all of these questions to know, how is this thing going to run? And I think people maybe too quickly have jumped over to this notion that a strategy is your list of projects. And I think we need to, before we get there, we need to go through, like, how are we going to run this? How much are we going to stop you from continuing to invest in projects that you said were completed? How aggressively are we going to prompt you to cease projects that are failing? Are we going to cease them in month 2 when we find out, or in month 15 when we're done arguing about it? Things like that. A well-formed strategy is going to address so much. And frankly, most of our customers, I think, haven't really answered all those questions when they begin.
Yeah, we see that. I don't know if it's the challenge, or it's the leaders defining the strategic goals really well, right? I think one of the things we find is it's kind of 2 different groups. You have leadership trying to create a corporate strategy, and they kind of have an idea of that, but then maybe they can sell or somewhere else in some other tool, and then you have your portfolio management system that has all the initiatives in there, and those are not always connected. And so that's one of the areas that we try to focus in on, is how do you get those 2 to intertwine? And it's important with their intertwine that that it's measurable, and that you can better understand what the impacts would be from projects to goals. And so these are some of the areas that we're seeing as not challenges, but things that people need to put effort into, is making sure that their goals are well defined, they're measurable, they're actionable with projects and initiatives. So those are areas that we're seeing kind of trends in the strategy to initiative or execution side.
I think we have time for one last question. This one is, I think, directed more towards you, Joe. So how does OnePlan provide evidence in audit situations that common standards in project management are kept and proven in detail?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that one?
I think it's more like, how do we back up audits in an auditing situation? How do we show that we're using common standards in project management?
So I guess I'm trying to understand the question a little bit more. So how do we back up standards?
How do we have like documentation in like audit situations that they're following a certain set of standards in an organization?
Yeah. Well, so one of the things that OnePlan supports is what we call process steps or stage gates, and that essentially allows you, and this is what we were talking about a little bit earlier, having a little bit of governancing and auditing through the process, is it allows you as an organization to kind of create different stages within a process for any type of project or epic or so forth, and you can control what things need to be completed with whatever variation to be able to allow that to kind of move to the next step. And so this ensures that projects are being thought through, their data that's required is being populated before a project may move to an evaluation stage, for example, or especially before it moves to execution, right? You don't want all projects, as Barry mentioned earlier, all going into execution and everybody's working on everything. There's definitely different stage gates that you want to create. So yeah, OnePlan has built-in stage gating and auditing capabilities built into it. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I think that does. All right, well, we're out of time. If you had a question that we didn't have time to get to, we'll follow up with you individually. Barry and Joe, thank you so much for taking the time to talk through these questions with the audience. If you have any additional questions you'd like us to get back with you on, contact@oneplan.ai is a great email. I'm happy to field any additional questions. We'll make sure that we get answers for you. Really appreciate everyone's time today. Thank you for joining us. Have a great afternoon and rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Barry, Tanya.
Thank you.
Great catching up. Talk to you later.